Why did you launch him 80 feet?
You told me to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
I absolutely love striper as well. All right, guys, in 3, 2, 1, we are live. All right, perfect, guys. We got this guy in the house again, and this is like something that we have to do as a tradition every time I'm here at the Richmond Fishing Expo. I got Alex. I think your title is like head of marketing, the face of everything that is the DWR.
So I'm not our marketing manager. We actually have a marketing team, but they're my colleagues. So my title is Aquatic Education Coordinator, I'm in our outreach division at the Department of Wildlife Resources. Great to be back out here, man. I love chatting with you. You've had a lot of my other DWR colleagues on the show lately. Love to see it, man.
No, I absolutely love. I'm trying to catch them all. Some of them are a little bit more shy. If you're listening, you know who I'm talking about. But I'm going to get you guys on there as well too at some point. It's just so much fun to hear the backstories. It's not just necessarily. This is what's so interesting. We'll get into it. Everyone thinks it's like you're looking for a hot clip or a hot topic, but it's more of like how you get into this. Like Joe Love, like he didn't grow up in the area, and then he's here in Maryland. It's just interesting to see everyone's backgrounds. Of course, everyone's favorite Odenkirk, being in Florida, looking like he should be modeling for Harley Davidson, and then he's out here doing the snakehead stuff. It's cool how people get to where they are, and they still care about the fisheries and everything.
Laughing at the modeling for Harley Davidson. One thing about being in the fish and wildlife arena, and this is true with DWR, everyone is very passionate about what they do, and that's something that's really unique. We've got a lot of different expertise at the agency, and we've got passion all across the agency, and people are very passionate about our aquatic and wildlife resources, and that shines through. So it's really cool working at a state fish and wildlife agency where everyone is so passionate about, we all got into this because we all enjoy the outdoors and, hunting, fishing, wildlife viewing. We all have our own niche or preference, but everyone values the outdoors. And that's one thing, just the passion is pretty cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And with you guys have such a massive diversity of fisheries where if you look at I've been really involved in the Pennsylvania situation, and that's primarily, you would consider it is a trout heavy demographic there.
Sure.
But in Virginia, it's a sprinkle of everything. You got your trout, you got your striped bass that we just talked about off air, catfish, bass. It's a massive, wide variety you guys get to work with.
Having the Chesapeake Bay in our backyard, largest estuary in North America, right? Largest estuary in North America. If you live in the central part of Virginia, Richmond or Charlottesville, you can get to the bay in 2 to 2.5 hours. And you've got, depending on what time of the year, you've got all the awesome saltwater opportunities. Striped bass, speckled trout, redfish, cobia, flounder. All sorts of saltwater opportunities. And then everything from, largemouth bass and smallmouth to brook trout up in the mountains. If you live in central Virginia, you could spend one day fishing for cobia and then the next day be up in the Shenandoah National Park casting dry flies at 8-inch native brook trout. So that's kind of unique. Sure, there's other states in the country that are more well known for robust big wild trout fisheries. It'd be hard to compare us to a Montana or a Wyoming, or even a state like Arkansas or Tennessee that has a lot more larger rivers and tailwaters. But the diversity, I think, in Virginia is unparalleled.
No, it really,
in my opinion. I might be a little biased though because I live here. So.
No, it really is. And then you guys had something that you just dropped a couple of weeks ago, which is kind of the cycle when it comes to how you make legislation and laws.
Absolutely,
correct?
Yeah. So basically, we have just entered. It's a biennial. So every other year, we'll do an aquatic regulatory cycle, right? And so basically, this is the opportunity where we will adjust, get rid of, or add new regulations from the aquatic arena for the Department of Wildlife Resources. So again, we manage inland freshwater fisheries. Our sister agency, the Virginia Marine Resource Commission, they have regulatory jurisdiction over all brackish saltwater species. So Atlantic striped bass, menhaden, redfish, speckled trout, that's not our game, that's the VMRC. But any inland freshwater fishery, blue cats, largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, trout, carp, gar, perch, all those different species are under our regulatory jurisdiction. So think lakes, tidal freshwater rivers, moving water rivers, from the Piedmont up into the mountains, as all kind of falls under us. And every other year we have an aquatic regulatory cycle. So right now we're in our scoping period, and this is where we want to hear from you. It's a great opportunity for the public to voice their concerns, their opinions on how we should or shouldn't manage a particular fishery of interest. So we're in our scoping period, which means that you can make a comment on our website, and we'll get you that link, Thomas. You can flash it on the screen or put it below. I have that all linked up. But this is a great opportunity to have your voice heard, and we really want the public to comment. It's essential that they play a role in this process. And right now, the public comment period is open. I think it opened on January 11th, and it's going to run through February 25th. So about a month and a half, and you could comment on anything related to freshwater fishing regulations. It's also related to recreational boating and non-game and endangered species regulations. So it's not just fishing, it's fishing, recreational boating, and non-game and endangered species regs for this cycle. If there's a fishery that you're concerned about that you don't think we're managing correctly, we want to hear from you. If there's a fishery that you think needs to be changed or regulations need to be altered, we want to hear from you. It's a great opportunity to. And the reason I emphasize that is that a lot of times we just don't hear from the general public as much as we'd like to on this. So if you're passionate about something and you think that something needs to be changed, it's essential that we hear from you. We read every single comment. Our fisheries chief, Dr. Bednarski, who you've had on the show, Mike reads every single one personally. And then he typically forwards them to our entire science teams. I read all of them myself as well. So we take that input very seriously. And basically what will happen is we'll group all those comments by topic, right? So if we get a lot of comments on smallmouth bass, we're going to internalize that, and that's going to go to our warm water streams committee, our internal science teams. And we actually break those comments down and try to develop regulations around them. We are mandated to manage our fisheries off of the best available science. So we do go by that by code, but we do break those topics out by category or by subject matter, and then that's broken down into internal science teams. We have I'm kind of rambling here, but internally within the fisheries division, we have a small impoundments committee that makes decisions about managing small impoundments all across the state. So think about the small department-owned lakes that are 60, 70, 50 acres or so. We have a large impoundments committee that meets on a regular basis. And think about the Smith Mountain Lakes and the Annas and the Gastons and the Bug Islands. We have, like I said, that warm water streams committee. Think about smallmouth bass, largemouth bass rivers. Cold water streams committee. Focused on trout fisheries and that kind of stuff.
What are these committees made up of? Are they made up of just internal stakeholders? Like what? And what are who are the stakeholders?
Yeah, great question. So these are internal committees made up of DWR staff, primarily across the fisheries division, for managing our internal resources. These teams are take input from the general public through these aquatic regulatory cycles. So that's why it's important for us to hear from you all. But they're internal teams within the structure of our division to work together to manage these resources for the benefit of the public and the angler in the end of the day. So that's why we want to hear from you all. Yeah.
So basically, let's just say what is a weird example? If people comment that they want to see a taco stand at a boat ramp, are you looking for how many of those same people comment that exact same thing, and then after the close of the period, you announce to the public that we're thinking about doing blank with the taco stand,
Exactly.
or is it just automatically going into effect?
Great question. So you bring me to the next part. So this aquatic regulatory cycle, like I said, it started on January 11th. Right now we've got a month and a half public comment period, and we get comments about all sorts of different stuff, right? I kind of think of it like spaghetti on the wall. We get stuff all over, right? We take that in, we internalize that within our science teams. We develop our proposed regulations for 2025 and onward, right? A lot of times taking into account those public comments that we get. Keeping in mind that we do have to manage these fisheries by code. We're mandated to manage them off of the best available science, right? So if we'll take in public comments and then take that into our management decisions based off of the best available science. We develop those regulations internally in-house, right? Those then go back out for public comment a second time, right? We'll probably need to connect again in a couple of months I'd love to do another update on this to kind of say, hey, we're thinking about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G as proposed regulations that we want to hear more public input on again for 2025. When we get those in, then we take in that second round of public comments. Then our board, we do have a board at the Department of Wildlife Resources. Our board will then vote to approve those regulations. If the board votes to approve them, they will then go into effect come January 1, 2025. So this cycle is for regs that will go into effect next year, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think that's important, is the transparency.
Two public comment windows. Sorry, hitting your mic. 2 public comment windows. This first one is just anything that you're interested in commenting on, a fishery that you think, are we managing something incorrectly? Is there an issue that you see? Would you like to see us do something differently? This is where we want to hear from you. And then again, the next public comment window will be geared again to specific proposed regulations that we're thinking about. So that'll be a little bit more, have a little more structure and focus to it on the next public comment window. But this one, we'll get comments from everything from, hey, I think you should introduce this European fish that, is over in, we've had people say, hey, introduce Xander to Virginia. We're not going to introduce Xander to Virginia, right? That wouldn't be a management decision we make.
That's oddly specific.
Off the best available science. We've had oddball ones thrown out there, right? So we obviously can't just do anything the public says, that we take that input in, and as long as we're, and it helps too. Like for instance, with the smallmouth bass stuff that we've been seeing, the issues that we're seeing on a lot of our larger rivers, like the James and the New, we've heard a lot from anglers recently. We're seeing reduced catch rates on smallmouth bass on the James River. And when you have 100 or 120 comments on a similar subject like that, it's clear to us it's a concern to a wide spectrum of our constituent base. And we know we have issues with the smallmouth bass. We're working on that. We're trying to identify that. There's still a lot we don't know. But it's really helpful for us, for the public, to kind of play a role in that process.
No, and that's really important, guys. And again, what I want you to do is head on over to the DNR's website, link in the episode description. Go vote, go ask questions. It's just really important to have that open communication and dialogue. You guys, as you know, that whole PA episode that I dropped, we actually went viral, believe it or not. We were ranking on Google Trends with that episode. And one of the issues there, I think, is just transparency and communication, as always. And the more transparency and communication you have, the better. If you have an issue, go voice your opinion about it so that we can get the ball rolling.
And Thomas, these regs, like these public comment windows, they could be water body specific. So hey, if your home water body is Briary Creek Lake and you think there's something that we need to change about how we manage Briary Creek Lake, this is an opportunity for you. Or if it's species specific, let's say you are an avid striped bass angler and you like targeting striped bass in inland reservoirs that we manage, and you want to see something change statewide with striped bass or with a specific fishery, that's your opportunity. So we'll get lots of comments that are species specific, and then we'll get lots of comments that are water body specific, if that makes sense. And then again, it's not just fisheries too. It's, like I mentioned, recreational boating, regulations and laws, and then again, non-game and endangered species. So.
Dude, you do really great work. I don't want to keep you too long. I'll be heading back down to Richmond sometime this year to do more in-depth stuff.
Yeah, we'll
everyone.
Connect.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, is there anything else? Anyone people can find you or comment on anything, or is there anything else going on with the Virginia Department right now?
Yeah, this is the big thing right now from a fisheries perspective, is us really advocating that the public take a role in this process. And so we're really asking for that public input. But I can always be reached if you have questions, and you can link my email and contact info in below as well, and we can go from there. But let's plan on touching base in a couple months when we're ready for the second round of public comments, and we'll go from there.
Man, awesome, guys. Thank you, Alex, so much for coming on the show. Guys, we're going to go to a quick commercial break, and then we're going to be bringing you even more content. See ya.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your hosts, Thomas Ahrens and Jared Mounts. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good afternoon, everybody. We are live here for the final segment of the Richmond Fishing Expo. Alex was fantastic, really talking about the new regulations that are going to be coming in. And as always, that thing will be re-uploaded later in the week and on a little bit of a clip, since we've basically been running nonstop here for the last 3 or 4 days. And to wrap it off, I always try to get somebody new from the Maryland and the Virginia Department of Natural Resources on the show, really just to talk about what's been going on here. And Scott, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
For the people that don't know you and your position, what area of Virginia do you cover?
Pretty much, I'm one of the fisheries biologists at a Region 1, our Charles City County office. Pretty much from the James River up to the northern neck, in charge of managing the freshwater fisheries, a lot of the lakes, reservoirs, ponds, as well as the tidal Rappahannock from Port Royal on down, as well as the upper Piankatank River Dragon Run. So I do have a little river influence in some of my management, but primarily the lakes and reservoirs guy within Region 1, just north of the James. Region 1's broken up where we have a couple other biologists that cover, Chesapeake and south side below the James. So big stretch of counties, and keep busy with the freshwater management that we have out here.
So Alex was mentioning that you get to actually really husband some really cool places in Richmond area, and one of them is Chesden. And Bernarski talked about that place, and I've had SB Fishing on the show a couple of times. That's really a hidden gem in Virginia. Like, what is the history with Lake Chesden?
Well, Lake Chesden, it's one of those popular destinations, whether you're fishing for largemouth bass that are there. We do stock saugeye. We had walleye stockings for several years, but we transitioned over to saugeye stockings, so that's an up-and-coming segment of the fishery there. Seeing good numbers of 3 to 5 pound saugeye, so it's kind of one of those things where, hey, might not necessarily fish for bass when you're out at Chesden. Try something different. Fishing for saugeye, you can catch them on deep diving crankbaits, variety of different lures. And we've actually talked to a few fishermen that have been having a good time, trying to fish for the striped bass out there as well, and still catching some nice saugeye in the mix. We've seen saugeye up there to 7.5 pounds, and we do have some remnant walleye that are out there. We got one. We actually broke our record that we've, in terms of walleye we've handled out on Lake Chesden. We got one that was 8.2 pounds, so that was a pretty solid female. That one we actually tagged with our reward tag, so if anybody catches that fish, boom, it's worth you got the 2 Floyd tags on there, so it's a $40 fish. So it'd be nice to see if that female turns up at some point. So plenty of gizzard shad out there, pretty fertile reservoir. The Appomattox River was a little bit crazy the last few weeks with the flooding rains that we've had, but the lake should settle back down, eventually settle out. Pretty much Brassfield Dam provides a 3,100 acre reservoir, produces a lot of nice bass. We've seen good numbers, 3 to 5 pound bass, consistent catch rates of those over the years. Always leads our tally in terms of our preferred catch rate of bass 15 inches and up. So every year we'll have the good numbers of those fish when we do our spring electrofishing surveys, and definitely no shortage of 3 to 5 pounders when we're out there sampling every spring.
How old is Lake Chesden?
It's been around, I'd say about 55, 60 years. It's been around a while.
So that's a newish lake compared to like the Kerr, Bug Island, and Gaston Lakes then, correct?
It's definitely, it's still, a little bit younger than some of the other reservoirs, but it's a popular destination. You do have our public ramp access on the south side, Dinwiddie side, so you have a free public boat ramp there, as well as a fishing pier on Dinwiddie side, which is close to the dam. You do have other, private ramp accesses that provide other launch facilities, so you can spread it out a bit. So about 13, 14 mile long reservoir, so riverine. So you do have some creeks and creek arms that provide a little habitat on windier days. So if you want to tuck into a Stony Creek or Bass and Run and you get out of the wind and try fishing for the different species that are out there.
How did you get involved in this?
As a fisheries biologist, well, I've been working with the Department of Wildlife Resources. Well, back when we were still at the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, I started working with the agency back in March of 1998. So I've been around a while. Transitioned from a fisheries technician in Farmville for three and a half years down there, full-time tech position in Region 1. Became a biologist back in 2004. Switched on over to Region 1. Been managing different fisheries out of Region 1 since 2004. So everybody's like, how long you been around? It's like, March of 98. I remember the glory days, netting that 14-pound bass out of Briery Creek Lake in 2001 spring.
Oh, you remember that? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was driving the boat when when everybody said, turn left now, as that 14.5 came off the point. So those were back in the days when we were doing a largemouth bass population estimate on Briery, basically doing fin clipping. So that one Tuesday we got the 14.5, 27 inches, and then 2 days later I got the 25.5-inch bass that went 14 even. So talk about mailboxes, and it's like those fish were a fat back in the day. Briery is still a decent, but the glory days of 14 to 15-pound fish might have gone by. We'll see, but that's a different Region 2. So it's you never know what's out there in terms of the fish that we collect. So that's kind of part of the the lure and excitement, as Lake Chesn, seeing some larger fish coming out of there. Well, that 8.2 pound walleye that we caught, that was the biggest one we've ever seen there. And I've seen some of our larger fish, even the flathead catfish that are coming on. So everybody likes to do the whole PB thing, so that kind of comes to even with some of our sampling. So when it comes to our our boat best, so we can maybe label it as the BB, like the boat best bass that you ever got out of Chickahominy Lake, 9.7. So you can do that for all the species, but I'll cut it off at that. But,
Where did you go to school? I mean, are you from Virginia?
No, originally from New York. Went to school at Mansfield University up in Pennsylvania. And basically transitioned from being a Northeast guy to come down to Virginia.
Why?
Basically, a little bit better opportunities in terms of getting jobs in Virginia. It's a little tricky in New York in terms of not as many positions up there, and just happy to be working down here for the time that it's been. So the years have a way of flying on by. So it's kind of one of those things where I haven't kept a tally of the hundreds of thousands of fish I've measured over the years, but who knows. But
when you think New York, I think a lot of people get a wrong process. They think Manhattan, that's it. There's no wildlife basically in New York, but that's like not the case at all.
No,
with New York.
there's plenty of good resources in a lot of these northern states, and going to school in Pennsylvania, then like in New York where I grew up. I grew up in Brewster, New York, about 50 or so miles north of New York City, Putnam County. About 10 miles or so basically west of Danbury, Connecticut. So everybody's like, you upstate? I'm like, well, depending on who you talk to. It's like, well, I'm not Watertown, not Buffalo, this or that. I'm 50 miles north of New York City. Plenty of lakes and reservoirs in New York City Croton system.
Really?
Great fishing. Absolutely amazing fishing in a lot of the lakes and reservoirs in and around Brewster and Carmel. And
I didn't know that.
Fishing Lake Gilead, Lake Lenida, Middle Branch Reservoir. Give props out to the good fishing opportunities, up there in New York State. So if you want my best largemouth bass, catching that 8-pounder through the ice at Diverting Reservoir.
Whoa, I gotta hear this story.
Yeah.
You caught an 8-pounder through the ice?
Yeah. It's pretty fun fishing. Yeah, fishing with my brother. Shoot, I was in high school, I think junior in high school. I had about maybe about 14, 15 inches of ice. That's actually when we still had winters. And fishing Diverting Reservoir, basically trip up flag trip, came over there, set the hook, thought I had hooked a log, and
oh my God,
started pulling line. As I told my brother John, I was like, grab the tip up, clear the line. And I fought it as it screamed off about 50 yards of line, but managed to squeak it through the hole. But then you get some nice opportunities, and 5-pound smallmouth bass fishing East Branch Reservoir, and shoot 6-7 pound brown trout fishing Middle Branch. So it's always good opportunities. It's a matter of where you look, and you never know where you're going to find the some places around Virginia do offer those opportunities. Just a matter of getting out there and trying your luck.
That's crazy because and maybe it's me not getting out of my area, but I just never thought of New York like all that outdoor opportunities. But it sounds like really what got your passion for the outdoors set, and then transfer going from New York to PA. PA is like a big trout place too as well. Did you do a lot of research in trout when you went to school there before you segued down to Virginia?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff we had in Mansfield, a lot of the fish culture classes we had basically specialized in learning the propagation of trout. I chose, instead of going the hatchery route, I chose the fisheries management route. So it's kind of like that weird transition when you do graduate where it's, hey, you want to go to the hatchery and bring your talents and skills to producing fish, or you want to try to go to the fisheries management action and try to spread on as much of your knowledge as you can to benefit the anglers or wherever you are at that given time. But yeah, the trout fishing is huge up in Pennsylvania. Open day of trout season. I remember fishing Hamilton Lake. Some of my buddies. You get there side by side. 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock lines in. Everybody casting away. But you also get to see the excitement of the Berkeley trout baits as the wind's blowing. Yellow, chartreuse, red, blue. As all the power bait that falls off hooks as it blows on by, and everybody's screaming for the Palomino trout as the golden trout goes swimming on by, and it's like, hey, Palomino at 11 o'clock. You never know. So you get the action of that. It's always interesting. But yeah, trout fishing is huge in a lot of the states up in the Northeast, and we have a fair amount of trout action here in Virginia. Most of it's kind of entitled to more of the mountain region. We do try our best during the winter months, transitioning that to having our urban trout programs, and that's kind of something I keep busy during the winter months with our trout stockings at Dory Park Pond, Eastern Henrico County. We do stock trout into Shields Lake, and actually, this Wednesday we'll be stocking trout down at Armistead Point Pond down in Hampton. So you get those 5 trout stockings during the winter months. provides some action for people that live locally in the greater city regions of Richmond. Then you got Newport News, Hampton, so people don't have to drive that 2.5 hours or so to get to a mountain trout stream. So you do have these smaller ponds that provide a good resource for those trout stockings. Those urban waters, we do stock those channel catfish. Come May, pretty much about second, third week of May, tie in those catfish stockings, put 1,000 pounds of channel catfish, usually a pound a piece in Armistead Point Pond. And then Dory and Shields, those both get 1,750 pounds of channel catfish. Those fish we actually purchased from an out-of-state vendor, so they all try to pretty much average at about a pound a piece. And it provides some good action for those, May through about September or so. There is a fair amount of harvest associated with those waters, and people do catch a bunch. They do come in handy, the catfish, when we have our free fishing weekend at Dory Park Pond, usually that first full Friday, Saturday, Sunday of June. You don't need a fishing license. We want people to come on out, try their luck fishing. We got to bring all the equipment and baits and all that random stuff, and sometimes we get wild, the cherry flavored Kool-Aid or this or that or Jello mix on the hot dogs, and you never know what random cut bait I might bring to Dory Park to catch some of those channel cats. And helps when we're using the circle hooks, so people that are not really necessarily paying attention to their lines as closely as they should be, it's like that circle hook fish in the corner of the jaw. That's always a little bit better than a gut hook catfish. But
Rappahannock River, you mentioned it before with like the perch. I think this was when we were off camera there. What kind of perch fishing is there actually in the Rappahannock watershed?
Yeah, with the Rappahannock, you're pretty much looking at the white perch and the yellow perch. There are certain areas on the lower tidal Rappahannock that provide some better action for the white perch. Maybe you get into some of those 9 to 11 inch white perch. You're not really hearing too much. White perch bigger than that. Piles and piles of smaller white perch further up in the system. You get around, just around Port Royal or so.
Okay.
And the yellow perch are probably more of a bigger draw. If we get a little bit warmer spell towards the end of this week, where everybody, 60 degrees on Friday, things might turn around. Maybe we won't have any more ice on some of these creeks. Still a bit off from having like the yellow perch spawn itself, but that's not to say the activity level of these fish won't pick up to a certain point. Or if you get those water temps into the mid 40 range, activity level will pick up, and you'll have a chance to catch some of these decent yellow perch on some of the tidal creeks on the Rappahannock. And we'll not to blow up any spots. That's kind of one of the running jokes we have. But you don't have to look too far. You have a Facebook post here or there. You'll find people itching at the bit to try to get out there and catch some yellow perch. A lot of them, 11, 12, 13-inch range, and you get some of those larger females start putting on some weight. So it's kind of interesting where a lot of those perch, you're looking at Rappahannock River spawning pretty much second to third week of February for the most part. It all depends weather, whether or not we have, week and a half, and 60, 65 degree weather. You never know what you're going to have here in Virginia. So, but those fish will definitely start moving a lot earlier. A lot of the lakes and reservoirs, you'll have the black crappie start keying in action-wise. Be surprised some of the better action that we have in January and February for a lot of the black crappie. And anybody who's probably sitting at Beaver Dam Swamp Reservoir in Gloucester at the 606 arm, probably fighting left and right for shoreline access. They catch some crappie up in the creek, so they get to go on their early season migration push where they race on up creek and try to find some food. And while they're up there, they find their fair share of hooks and jig heads.
Scott, I know you're a busy man. You've been here all day, so I don't want to keep you way too long. This is a good little taste of you actually getting on the show for the first time. Is there anything else that you have coming up? Any surveys you're going to be taking part of this year, or any kind of studies that are going to be involved in 2024?
I'm probably going to continue with some of the bass tagging on the tidal Rappahannock River. We were really into it 2022. We spent a lot more time out there in May and June doing our bass tagging study. Basically, we're looking at any possible movements of tag bass from below Port Royal further on upriver, basically for any weigh-ins. And basically, a lot of the tagging, there's a small monetary reward behind it, not too much on that, but we do appreciate any help from anglers when it comes to reporting tag fish, where they're catching them, and the lengths and possible weights on those fish just to see how fast they're growing. We're trying to tag some more fish. We did tag a few more in 2023, but we did spend more time in 2023, our surveys during the late summer months and early fall when we were actually collecting fish for DEQ. Virginia Department of Environmental Quality was doing fish tissue testing, so we're kind of waiting on some of the possible fish contaminant testing results from some of the fish that we collected, whether the bowfin, some of the long-nosed gar, some of the northern snakehead, yellow perch crappie. So we did get a mix of some of the different predator fish that we pass on to DEQ. But for this upcoming year, we got a lot of our spring surveys coming on. I'm going to be more involved this year with our walleye collections on the Stanton River, basically out of Brookneal, because they're going to be needing my assistance down there because our hatchery manager, Mike Gafford, basically retiring soon, and we wish Mike all the best with his upcoming retirement. But basically, we're losing some knowledge down there, so they're kind of calling on help to have me come down there and help with collection of some of the broodstock walleye there at the Stanton River for help with our propagation and eventual stocking. And we're keeping busy this year with our walleye stockings around the board, and as well as our saugeye propagation. So I'll be heading back out to West Virginia to help collect sauger on the Ohio River. So they're probably looking at early part of March. So that kind of keeps me busy on that end. But
So Ohio River is where you get your broodstock from?
Yeah, that's where we get the sauger milk collections. We're with Apple Grove Fish Hatchery, Ryan Bosterman and his crew. They're been grateful to help us out. Without their assistance, we're not going to would have a hard time having saugeye stock. So it's kind of a magic thing where the sauger milk collections there from the Ohio River that we collect there at the hatchery, and then race them on down to Vic Thomas Hatchery in Brookneal, and they get the female walleye from the Stanton River tying into that, and they'll hatch those fish out. Incubate the eggs there at the hatching jars at the hatchery there, then the fry and all that will eventually make their way to King and Queen Hatchery, and they'll raise those fish out for about 5 to 6 weeks. Then we'll stop those fingerling stockings, and Lake Chesn's been benefiting from that constant production, and it wouldn't be possible without the help from the West Virginia staff.
Last thing. Do you think a 10 or 12 pounder could actually come out of Chesden, largemouth wise?
Mike Bednarski would love to think a 10 or 11 pounder would be coming out of there, but I've heard of 11.2 that somebody caught back in 2018.
Damn.
So I talked to a fisherman when we had our creel survey on Chesden, and he's like, "Oh man, you should have interviewed me like 2 weeks ago." 11.2. So there's a lot of forage there in Lake Chesden, plenty of gizzard shad. Anybody that was here yesterday that was complaining about the walleye have ruined Lake Chesden, that is far from the case. There's plenty of nice bass still in Chesden. Lots of 3 to 5, 6 pounders. Of course, I'd like to see a few more 7 or 8 pounders in our electrofishing survey, but we'll see how that goes in this spring when we're out there. A lot of times it comes to the timing there. Chesden's an interesting fishery because a lot of the male bass will live they'll live 8, 9, 10, 11 years, and a lot of those we have some larger male bass, these 4.5, 5 pound bucks.
Interesting.
Not necessarily when you think about buck bass, it's that 2 to 3 pounder sitting on a nest, but we find a lot of these 4.5, 5 pounders that are sitting in the water willow, and you wonder that 5 pound male, how large that guy's female was
Is that
the week before,
strain?
but
is that northern strain?
yeah, well, you do have some Florida genetics mixed in. We are in the process of still stocking the F1 fish, and we're looking at this will be the 5th year of our stocking of those tiger bass.
Wow.
We've gone with 3 different stocking rates. Initially the F1 stocking program, Smith Mountain Lake was in there, and Clater Lake came on. And it basically went with, Lake Anna, Beaver Dam Swamp Reservoir, and Lake Chesden were the 3 later additions to the program. And years have a way of flying by, date myself kind of deal. We're looking at the 5th year stocking. This is actually be the heavier stocking. We're looking at the different stocking rates. We're basically 50%, 100%, 150%. So different rates on that stocking rate. And this year will be the larger amount that we're buying from the American Sportfish Hatchery. So down there in Montgomery, Alabama. There's my little commercial for the guys down there at American Sportfish. And they produce a nice product. And it was the same fish that were stocked in the Chickahominy River. Had those great results, those fish pushing through. Whether or not you still have some of those larger females, some of those fish still hanging around from past stockings on the Chickahominy River, might be the case. We definitely saw some of those larger fish that sneaked into Chickahominy Lake when those, that 9.3 and the 9.7 that we got at Johnson Creek, several years back. So that was kind of interesting. That 9.7, we actually tagged that fish, and that fish told the story where it was caught. About a year later, it was about 10 and a half. And then a year after that, it got up to 13 pounds. So it was caught in a tournament there at Ed Allen's. So that was kind of wild. So I don't necessarily think that 13-pounder is still with us, but you'd always like to think that she might be swimming around there, and not necessarily in the depths of Chickahominy Lake, but hanging behind some cypress tree somewhere.
Scott, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Guys, again, please go support Virginia's department. It really helps them out. Like we said with Alex, get out there, leave some respectful comments of things that you'd like to see happen in the future. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be coming back with our final segment of the show.
launch him 80
You
feet in
told
the
me
air.
to boat flip him!
I didn't tell you to launch him 78
I
feet
flipped
in the
him
air.
in the boat, didn't I?
Send it to the moon.
I sent it! You said boat flip him!
Oh, yeah.
Do you fish? No. You know, people who don't fish think that fishing is lazy or boring, but it is the complete opposite. There are 100 little decisions to be made, variables to be considered, and you're never quite sure what made the difference. Did I cast too high, too far to the left? Did I reel it in too slow or too fast? Is the lure too shiny or too dull? Do I stay here or should I go over there? And you know it's not luck, but you do not know by how much. Because I am never disappointed out here. Because I don't expect anything. Because anything is possible. I can be hopeful out here, even in failure. Because I know if I just go out there around that tree, it might be different. Something might be different. Something I do might make a difference.
On my property, you didn't win in my yard.
Wait.
All of you.
Daddy, chill.
What the hell is even that?
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Cade Bailey here is going to tell us about his vise, which is really unique. I've got a vise not quite as nice or as fancy, and I tied a little bit earlier, and he was kind of instructing me, showing me some of the features of it, which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah, so this is the Norvise fly tying system. It's a it's one of the best jaws on the market.
And when you say jaws, that's the piece,
I mean,
the
vise.
part that.
I meant vise.
Yeah, but the jaw is the part
Yeah,
that you're
the
putting
jaw,
the hook in, right?
Yeah.
Pretty sure that's called a jaw.
This is the Magnum saltwater jaw.
Okay.
There are 5 different types of jaws. I don't have them on me right now since this was kind of a last minute thing.
Yeah, no, you're good. Yeah, we threw this together.
There's fine point jaw, which is meant for your smaller flies. The shank jaw, which is meant for shanks and intruder flies. Standard jaw, which is the jaw that comes with the vise. And the saltwater jaw, which is the one I have on today, which is for bigger hooks and your aught size is like 1 aught through 10 aught.
So talk to me a little bit about your hooks too, like the thing about whether trout fishing or bass fishing, about features of that hook, like shank, right? There's an eye and a shank, and how that eye comes off of the shank.
Yeah, so yeah, I don't.
There's different lengths of the hook, and I'm not an expert on it, but when you look how that eye comes off, and then the shank of your hook, the size of the hook, and then what you're going to do, what's so fascinating, I want to say on the onset too, would you not agree, Cade, like when you watch somebody do this, it looks like it's the hardest thing ever.
It really
but once
is.
you learn some basic steps of fly tying, it's actually not as hard as it looks.
It's not. I mean, it looks very intimidating. It is not hard at all.
But you're going to build a fly, starting with the hook. Now, what are some different components of a fly or a bug? When you think of fly, what are the components of a fly?
So for the back, you're either thinking of a tail or legs, like this fly. So this is a popper fly that I tied, which I'm going to be tying today. Smaller fly, supposed to look like a frog, meant for smallmouth bass, largemouth, whatever fish eats a frog. Also, you can think of a tail, which is something thin in profile. It moves a lot in the water.
That's right.
For the middle, you're thinking of an abdomen, which is like a stomach, a little thicker.
The body.
Yeah, the body of the fly. And you're looking at the head. So a lot of my flies, this head's made out of foam, which so it floats. It's like a popper fly. A lot of my flies, like my Game Changers, like I was on yesterday talking about, has a big, wide profile, big, bulky head to push a lot of water to make this thing really swim in the water.
Articulated to give you that swimming action.
Flies. Really big, meant for smallmouth. That head really pushes all that water and makes this back really move back and forth like this. Yeah. Today I'm going to be tying a quick popper. This one is airbrushed. I airbrushed the head of this one a couple days ago, just started airbrushing. Obviously I'm not going to airbrush today. Don't have it on me. Yeah, I'm gonna tie one of these, just not as fancy.
Let's see it. Put it into action here.
Yep. So first we're starting out with the Gamakatsu B10S in size 1. One of the cool things about the Norvise is how fast it spins. I don't want to spin it really fast and wobble the table, but I'll just...
Wow.
Real smooth, fast. It helps you put a easier thread base. This is the Norvise automatic bobbin. Start wrapping your thread. And this thing is awesome. You can reattract. So I'm going to put it on your thread post, get it out of the way to tie your materials in. But instead of having to roll it up like you usually would like this, it just goes straight up.
Wow.
It's spring loaded. Makes it really easy for tying. And the advantage of the Norvise spinning as fast as it does, lay down a real easy thread base, thick thread base. The Norvise also locks at every 90, so you can lock it at every angle.
And what you just did too, you work to the back because you're going to be tying the tail on first, so just having an idea, when you build it, you're going to work back to front in most cases, right?
Yep, so unless you're tying some type of really fancy fly, you're always going to work from back to the eye of the hook. I'm starting off with Cohen's frog legs in size medium. So I'm just gonna color these really quick with these, just to make it look a little better. I just got these cheap markers off Amazon.
That's something I'd carry my lunch in, what you got there, but you got markers in there.
Yeah.
My snacks.
So I'm gonna tie like a chartreuse color today. So, figure out what color I want. Caesar's green.
Is that a felt? The legs, are they like a felt, or what material do you think? Your legs, your frog legs.
I have no idea what they're made out of.
Okay, but you just bought that.
They really
came
take
like
in
that.
the color though, which is really nice. So I'm just, you can see this. I'm just gonna color these real quick. Just hold the end and start coloring. I would use my airbrush and airbrush these, but I don't have it on me. That's something I can make a YouTube video on later, which I'm
You
planning
do a
on
good
doing.
job with like your Instagram. If you guys follow him on Dead Drift Fishing, dead_drift_fishing on Instagram, you can watch him tie a lot of his flies, and he moves through them pretty quick. It's pretty fascinating, really.
All right. So all I'm gonna do, I just colored this with my Sharpie real fast, just to make it green, make it look a little better. Then I'm gonna tie it down in the back. Loose thread wrap. If you do a tight thread wrap, it's gonna twist on you. First wrap is always loose. 2 loose wraps, and then crank it down, and then tie that thing on. That will never come off unless you try to take it off and start really yanking on it. Now you got 2 frog legs. Really simple. All right, next we're gonna use a translucent fly brush by Renzetti. I'm gonna take a little bit of this material off so I have somewhere to tie it down, a little wire to tie it down like that. I'm not sure you can see that, but tie that in. Real tight wraps on that one. Really secure that thing in. You don't want that to fall out. We're gonna work our way all the way up to the, I would say about 1.5 hook eyes behind the hook eye. Do a half hitch, which is just a whip finish, so your thread doesn't slide while you're tying in the material. Just like that, real simple.
Now, guys, he says real simple. That would take a little bit. Once you have it, you got it down. It becomes second nature.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
It's really
If you've never
not.
done it,
Ton of
you just
YouTube
need to
videos
practice.
on it.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm gonna put my thread on the thread post and start tying this thing in. I'm gonna pull these fibers back. Pull these things back while I'm tying it in and use the Norvise rotary system.
I do like that. Usually I'm going around it. Mine doesn't rotate, so I'm having to wind it around. That is a good feature. It's coming together nicely.
I'm gonna go a good way up this body.
Most all flies have what you call a pattern too, right? Like a recipe pattern.
Yeah.
If you're reading a book or you go on YouTube, they'll give you the materials you need, kind of the pattern, how to build it. And that is the key. Again, like he said earlier, you're building front to back, and you got to think about that, how it builds upon itself so that you get the finished product.
I'm just gonna tie that down, cut that off with your scissors.
It's coming together nicely.
Give that a good thread base. Then we're gonna go to the front of the eye. Whip finish.
Another technique that's once you learn it, it's a whip finish. It's a way to tie the knot.
Yep, the way to end your fly, always.
Tie it off.
All right, and then I'm gonna use a, I don't really know how to say it, but it's made by Flyman Fishing Co. It's a little popper head. And they do not have a hole through the middle, so I'm gonna use my bobkin. And I'm just gonna slit a hole right through the middle of that.
Interesting. I've never done these, and I've always wondered, but some of them are slit, right? You go down over top of it.
Some of them are. These ones are not.
Okay.
So I usually like a thicker needle for my bobkins.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do that through the front and the back. Make sure you don't poke yourself. And I'm gonna slide that onto the hook just to make sure it fits before I put glue on there.
Test it first. Man, that looks awesome, Cade.
Then I'm gonna put some glue on there. Not a lot. That's all you need, just a little bit. You don't have to do this, but I spread it with my finger. It's just easier.
Get it around evenly.
We good?
We're good.
All right, after that, put the glue on. I'm gonna put this on and I'm just gonna start twisting it. Just like that. It's nice and secure on there. Make sure it's there. All right, and then I have this ugly body. I'm gonna trim it, give it a little more profile, a taper. So I'm just gonna start trimming it.
Your little haircut.
Yeah. I'm gonna make the bottom of the fly a little more flat, so I'll use my other scissors for that. Give that a spin and get all that stuff off. All right, and for the bottom, I'm gonna use my flat scissors. There you go. Just a nice taper on that thing. All right, now I'm just gonna color it with another one of these markers they got off Amazon. Use the thick side, and I'm just gonna start coloring that. Give it a nice fade. And that's just a real simple, fast popper fly.
And if you wanted to put eyes, you would have like another eyes. Like you said, we threw this out last minute. But so like that, when you have eyes on there, you would glue those eyes in, I'm assuming.
See that? Can you see that?
Yeah.
Yep, so I have some eyes in there. I just use super glue, or you can use UV resin.
That thing would be deadly on the Shenandoah River, fly rod, summertime, popping that thing across. Big smallmouth would take that, no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of creativity that goes into something like this too, like your mind. Like, again, you go to YouTube, like you say, and there's a lot of stuff out there. Somebody that wants to get started in it, what are the because you didn't start with this either. What are the basic tools that you need to get started in fly tying? You don't have to spend a lot of money when you start.
No. So there's a lot of kits out there give you all the tools you need to start fly tying. All you really need, scissors, a whip finish, and a bobkin. That's all you need. And you don't even really need the bobkin. All you need is a whip finish and some scissors.
And the spool, right? That's what it's called, a spool.
And
it doesn't have to be as fancy as the one he has.
No.
I mean, that's really good technology, but there's some, like you said, you get a kit that has all this stuff in it, right?
Yeah, so you can get a kit, no more than $20. I mean, it has every tool you need to start tying flies. And At Jake's, they carry some cheaper vices, which are very good to
That'll
start
get
out
you
with.
started. Yep.
Yeah,
Get a few materials and then just start tying.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure your first couple probably weren't great, were they? I mean, like you probably took you a little while to kind of get the skill set down, the handwork down. Talk again about, so you've got, I don't know if they're called sponsors, not necessarily sponsors, but what are some different people? You're starting to get on some, like as a pro staff type thing, and representing them. What are some of those manufacturers and folks?
Yeah, so right now I only have one. I'm a junior team member for Norvice. You can go on their website and I'll be on their junior ambassadors, norvice.com. It's very good vice. Hopefully trying to pick up some more partnerships. But yeah, working on it.
And you got an opportunity, you got invited to go where this?
Yeah, so today I was invited to go to the Midwest Fly Fishing Show, which is like out of Detroit in Michigan. So I'll be there, I believe it's March 9th and 10th.
That's really awesome.
And I'm going to some other shows. I'm going to the Maryland Fly Fishing Show. I don't know the date off my head. And I'm going to the Rapidan Fly Fishing Show, which I believe is on February 10th. I could be wrong, but I think it's on February 10th.
It's really cool, Cade. And so you're some of the waters you're fishing to. And what I like about Cade is, he's kind of crossing over between, and again, Thomas has said time and time again, this industry is very tribal. And so you have different species of fish. You've got crappie fishermen and bass fishermen, smallmouth, largemouth, rivers, saltwater. But fly tying is typically a trout emphasized deal, trout and streams, fly fishing. And you're kind of crossing over, you're doing the fly fishing. You've been on some pretty cool creeks in Pennsylvania and caught a lot of good trout, but you're also doing smallmouth, right, on the rivers and.
Yeah. If I had to fish for something, it'd probably be like pre-spawn smallmouth in April, which is coming up. Favorite to fish for, you fish these real big flies, which a lot of people, when they think of fly fishing, is really, really small flies. But you can also tie giant flies like this for smallmouth. This is Blaine Chocolate's hybrid game changer. I'm gonna fish this one for some pre-spawn smallmouth. Yeah, you can fish for a lot more than just trout with fly fishing. I fished for crappie, panfish, largemouth, smallmouth, and hopefully a lot more coming up here soon.
And then you get into the entomology too of which a lot of guys don't realize is everything that is living in that body of water. Now we're familiar with, bass guys are familiar with crayfish and hellgrammites, which is actually a fly though. It's a Dobson fly if I'm not mistaken, that starts underneath a rock, and then you have different phases of the fly, the streamer, nymph, and then eventually gets to the subsurface and then gets wings, flies off. Frogs, so there's a lot of things living under the water that fish are eating, all fish are eating. And we talked a lot this weekend about that as far as being a hybrid and crossing over and using these materials to catch crappie or bass, not just trout. So it's pretty cool, man. You've, like, as a seventh grader, you have really come a long way in a short time, and I'm excited to see what your future holds moving forward. Crayfish too, so you've got a crayfish pattern there.
Pulling off here.
I think game changers have definitely been your little niche, though.
I think I showed this
Yeah,
one
we showed the other day.
yesterday.
Yeah, it's a mean-looking dude there.
Crayfish fly right there.
Good stuff. So remind everybody again, Cade, where can they follow you?
Yep, my Instagram and my Facebook is Dedra Fishing, all uppercase. And my YouTube is Dedra Fishing 2. And my email is dedrafishing17@gmail.com, all lowercase. And yeah, if you need some flies for smallmouth and other fish, you can send me an email and I can tie you some certain flies that you're looking for.
Very cool. And so it's funny too, last weekend he was down here at Doswell for the fly fishing expo, and then this weekend is the bass fishing expo. And so then we looked today, there was one vendor that I saw out there that was doing like spinner baits. They were tying buck hair on spinner baits. You messed around with a buzz bait too, did some frog legs and some hair fur on a buzz bait, some spinner baits, and then like your Ned rigs with your marabou. Like it's kind of cool. You can do a lot with this, tying this stuff to the thing. Cade, great job. I appreciate you coming down and this weekend and tying. And again, like I said before, just look forward to what you're going to bring in the future. You guys check them out. Thanks, Cade.
Yep, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to start our trout fishing competition. Brace yourself for that. I'm going to log off this stream and get ready for the next one.